Fulbright University, welcome back to the show. Today, we're diving into a topic that's gaining serious momentum across sports, health, and performance, the science of the mind. Our guest is someone at the forefront of this movement, Ignacio Handal, CEO of Clinicom and one of the top clinical researchers in the world. With over 20 years of experience leading FDA clinical trials and innovations in neuroscience, Ignacio has helped bring dozens of breakthrough therapies to market, impacting over 200 million lives globally. Now, he and his team are bringing the same level of medical-grade precision to mental health and performance through Clinicom, a groundbreaking platform that can remotely assess more than 80 mental health conditions using adaptive AI. So if you're a parent, an athlete, an athletic trainer, sports medicine professional, counselor, or work with athletes and high performers in any capacity, this episode is for you. We're talking about real actionable insights into focus, stress, recovery, confidence, and how tools like Clinicom are giving us new ways to see the mind like we see the body. Iggy, welcome to Fulbright University, and thanks for stopping by.
Always good to see you, Calvin.
Awesome, my man. Well, let's start from the top. Why is the world in need of a platform like Clinicom?
You know, in this world of high technology and AI, Calvin, I feel like we are more connected than ever before, but yet we are more isolated than ever before. People are technologically connected, but more interpersonally disconnected. And, because we might have 1,000 friends on our Facebook or 10,000 friends on our Facebook, but it seems like, our core groups are getting smaller. And we're seeing this in children. I mean, loneliness is becoming a major issue. And, it used to be that, 1 in 5, 1 in 6 people were experiencing a mental health condition. Now they say it's 1 in 4. And I think the numbers are probably even bigger, especially post-pandemic. And also the stresses of life. 200 years ago, you were on a farm. All of us were farming, and the worries and the list of things we had to do, obviously a lot of chores, but, they didn't have a list of having to pay your internet bill, your phone bill, your this, and the other. So the stresses on human life have also increased and accumulated.
I mean, stress, regardless of what area we're talking about, whether that's professional, personal, it's everywhere, right? And like you said, constant communication, but we're really looking at ways of how do we align with relieving some of that stress, building a little bit of that emotional intelligence. And of course, as you know, Ignacio, our community is the football community. And when you're performing at some of the levels that are in the collegiate atmosphere, there's tons of stress, tons of pressure, not only on the players, but on the parents, on the staff to keep their team as healthy as possible, not only physically, but mentally. So what are some tips and tricks or advice from what you have seen within being in the mental health space for so long?
As many people have repeated this quote a million times, there is no health without mental health. And I think the transition of moving mental health from this fringe element of health to a core central element of our overall health. We could have our bodies dialed in. We could be in the gym for 2 hours every day. But if our mind is not managing that well, that can lead to other body health issues. It could lead to other interpersonal health issues and other mental health issues for those around us and our families. So managing your mental health for everybody, especially athletes, is just as important as managing your physical health. So one, to make it a priority of overall wellness and happiness is prioritizing mental health. But Clinicom, in a sense, a lot of these conditions, we screen for conditions. A lot of them go unnoticed, or people are unaware of the connection between their sleep or other facets of their life, or the way they're learning or reading or other things, and how that overall overflows into mental health. So the way that Clinicom can help is to be a neutral arbiter of truth, where you're not having to disclose sensitive things or things to a clinician directly. You can disclose those to the AI, and it can screen you for 80 mental health conditions by the American Psychiatric Association standard, which they call the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. So there's certain criteria each of those conditions have. And a lot of times when you go see a clinician for the first time, you spend an hour meeting somebody you've never met in your life, and you're having to tell them the deepest, darkest secrets of your life, but that's pigeonholed and rabbit-holed into their lens of study and where they specialize. So if they're a sleep specialist, you're going to ask you about your sleep for an hour. If they're a so-and-so depression specialist, they're going to want to focus there. And that's kind of biased. We don't like that. In Clinicom, we're saying, hey, this is a neutral arbiter of truth. screens you by the criteria. It screens you for 80 conditions, but it only asks you the questions relative to you. So it's an adaptive AI that tailors the assessment. If you're 6 years old or 86 years old, male or female, athlete or non-athlete, it tailors that to you. So imagine screening, being able to screen an entire team privately and securely and isolate people, the issue at hand and saying, hey, these students are the ones that maybe need some support and help, and then care navigating them to the right level and cost of care without spending a whole lot of money hiring, let's just say a psychiatrist these days can cost $300,000, $400,000 a year. For an NFL team, they might be able to afford that. Some colleges can afford that, some can't, right? Or a high
Yeah.
school team, it's very hard. You have a school counselor and they're a master's level, not really there to diagnose anything. So imagine empowering a school counselor with the knowledge base and the power of being a board certified psychiatrist, as an example.
Wow. And it didn't seem like it was agnostic, or it does seem agnostic in a sense where whether you're in a youth league, high school, college, professional, at any stop along that journey, this tool or this resource seems like it's applicable. Is that correct to say, Ignacio?
Yeah, I mean, we have, like SUNY Upstate New York, 58 campuses screens all their students telehealth with Clinicom. So we
Mm.
have, high schools to universities, professional organizations using the program at all those levels. So it is, like I said, 6 years old or 86 years old, it doesn't really
Mm.
matter. Professional sports or call it collegiate or high school, it doesn't matter. The beautiful thing about Clinicom is that ubiquitous nature of the tool, but also the key thing I think is also the equity and access it brings. Because if you're a person of color or a minority like I am, a Hispanic American, if I go to a mainly white psychiatrist, I may be treated a certain way. If I live in Alabama, right, I might be treated a certain way or looked at a certain way, or pigeonholed into a certain concept. With Clinicom, it doesn't matter your race, your sex, your ethnicity, the language you speak. You're getting that kind of neutral arbiter of truth without anybody pushing their finger on the scale, which happens so often in mental health, right? And also, time of the day, right? If it's just 3 in the morning, you pull into an emergency room, the nurse is going to be less excited to see you if it's 3 p.m., right? And spend more time with you. So it never comes to work tired, late, or biased, if you would say.
It's working while you sleep, huh? So Ignacio, I think a lot about my personal experience when I was playing, and some of the challenges that I faced as a high performing athlete, whether it comes from some of the off the field pressure and stress, on the field pressure and stress. Let's just take a single football play in any traditional game, whether that be college, high school, or professional. It lasts mainly maybe 4 to 6 seconds. Let's put us on the 10-yard line and it's third and goal. What the mind has to go through biologically during those 4 to 6 seconds to process all that sensory information of currently what am I looking at? Let's take I'm the tight end. I'm reading the defense. Are they man? Are they zone? Do I have a blitz coming off the edge? Is the linebacker slightly outside or inside? I'm trying to throw off the defense based on my pattern recognition or body movements. Once the ball is hiked, now I have to continue to read the defense. If they change their scheme, I'm running across the middle, so I have to worry about a 240-pound linebacker coming across and trying to knock my bell loose. All this is being processed within a 4 to 6 second window. And when we really step back and look at it, the body, I mean, what it's going through from a neurohormonal and muscular explosion, that's something that I feel like we don't process truly because it's just so normal and we're such fans of the sport. But the way that the mind and the body is performing during that time is just impeccable. And then when we look at after the game, right, you've run about maybe 120 total plays, 60 per team. And as soon as the game is over, you're walking home or driving home just like every other fan in that stadium. But your body is still going through that. My sympathetic nervous system is shot. So a lot of the times we don't have that awareness of what's going on biologically, mentally during those peak performance moments. And it can be very hard to turn off, Ignacio, when you step off the field. And when we talk a little bit about that emotional intelligence, having that self-awareness of like, oh, this is what's going on right now in my body, my mind, because I just went through something so impactful, so mission critical that a lot of that fight or flight adrenaline is still going through my body, even though I'm not on the field anymore. And to just say you got to turn it off like a flip of a switch, that's very difficult. And you can find some challenges adjusting and getting back to homeostasis if you don't have that emotional intelligence or you're not aware of what's going on through that process. So, I wanted to bring that up and get your thoughts on that. Just being able to, it's like a rock star. You go out and you perform and you rock the stadium, and then you're off on the tour bus right after. Like, you don't just go to sleep. You've got to come down a little bit, but being aware and knowing what's going on, I think is huge and allows people to make some better decisions off the field.
I mean, hats off to every athlete, no matter if it's football, baseball, whatever sport they're playing, performing at that level. The miracle of our brains and neuroscience that we're doing all that most of the time, not aware of the miracle that is actually occurring as you're doing it. And as you've played that play 1,000 times or more, the more automatic it becomes, the more ingrained into your neuroscience it becomes. So it becomes less top of mind awareness and more, hey, I'm patterned to do this and reflexively react these ways, right? But you're pointing out a very important point that performing at that peak level, always being trying to refine and perceptual awareness and how we're dialed into taking in those sensory inputs so that we can optimize the outputs. Sometimes we get into the real world and everybody else is going 50 miles an hour and we were going 120, right? So how do we that emotional regulation and that down regulation, that downtime and that spiritual regulation, that self-awareness, that's the ability to self-regulate, those are also performance pieces that I think we should focus on in training, right? I think we should focus on how are we doing with my emotional regulation? How do I down regulate that so that I'm not all jacked up when I come to deal with my family, my interpersonal relationships, and I'm not using that intensity in a negative way, but channeling that into a positive energy and being self-aware that it does you don't step off the field and your pulse rate is whatever that may be, that number, it doesn't go back to 50 in a second, right? It slowly goes down, and being aware of that, just like our minds would have to do that. So some meditation, self-reflection, there's also yoga, there's a lot of different tools out there, and I'm not trying to advocate for one way or another, but I do think that people need to find what way works for them, be that meditation, time alone, dysregulation, breathing techniques, or just self-reflection, or sometimes it's just a long walk to cool down. I mean, I know all of us have had that time where we're or have a practice with coach in high school, and they're like, all right, walk it off, or everybody take 3 laps, and it's for a reason, right? It's like to kind of pull us down and to get us back to ground level. Good sleep is always a good measure. Getting the sleep we need, the way we're eating and sleeping and hydrating obviously helps regulate. But also some of us come from an environment, maybe we grew up in a big city, and we're always dialed into instead of a 9 or a 10, we're at 11, and the world wants us to be at 7 so that we can see more quote unquote chill or relaxed to deal with things. So I think having those that awareness of the situation is first, because if we're not aware, we can't react. But also, I think that will help improve athletes into their ability to listen. Something it's part of training that I need to take seriously. Just like stretching used to maybe made fun of 30 years ago. Oh, why are we stretching right before? We need to stretch. We know that science tells us it's important. Just like it'd be like coming off the field. So that's a great point, Calvin.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to build that awareness, Ignacio, when you're in a combat sport, right? You can't show pain, you can't show weakness, you can't, you know, sometimes you have to blur or overlook some of those challenges that you're going through. But if you can at least be aware of it, you can monitor it, and then decide, what action needs to be taken then. But
important too is, in mental health, they always say, none of us, every human being on the planet has had experienced sadness or happiness at some point, right? Like, because we have a sad day doesn't mean we have depression, right?
Mm,
But when these things start to affect our work, our school, or execution of our activities, or interpersonal skills, that's when they become issues. So
hmm
your awareness, so like somebody's ability to come off the field and go from an 11, as we say, to a 7, may be fine. And some people will get off the field and 3 hours later they're still 11 and it's affecting their home life. So being
Yeah.
aware of how those things are affecting it and if it's an issue or not for you, uh,
hmm
take it into that lens to see, to kind of be grounded enough to reflect or take input from others to say, hey, look, you're off the field 3 hours ago and you're still, talking to the kids that way, you know.
Yeah. And then you mentioned sleep, Ignacio, and I think that was one of the hardest things for me to do when I stepped off the field, especially if it was a late game. If it's an away game, you're traveling back, you're flying, you're not getting home until maybe 3, 4 a.m. So sleep was really difficult and really affected, my sleeping pattern, my circadian rhythm. How important is sleep for mental health, Ignacio, with what you've seen in your years of research?
I mean, sleep is one of the most fascinating areas of neuroscience, but we know from the research that that's when we kind of repackage, reprogram memories, rethink. I mean, it's not consciously aware of it, but we're learning as we're sleeping. We're repackaging
Mm,
information, sorting through what we learn. Our brains are trimming unnecessary things, tightening connections with other things, but also that's our time our body rebuilds itself. That's
mm,
when stem cells are being put out and our body is fixing things that are broken, torn, or in need of repair. So bad sleep, just you're not getting fixed as well as you need to be fixed, and you're mentally not being repackaged and optimized and tuned in like you need to be. So sleep and oxygen during sleep is a key component.
yep. And we talk about it all the time, Ignacio. Your best ability is availability in the world of sports, right? If you're injured, if you're not recovering, you're not able to perform at your top, it's very competitive. And you're one injury away from getting cut. You're one injury away from getting your spot taken. Even as a coach, you're one game away from losing your job. So um, injury, I think, is also another factor that comes into mental health where something that's a little bit out of your control. You could do all the preventative exercises in the world. You stayed after, you went to the training room, you've done recovery, you did the ice bath, and then you get rolled up on in the game, and now you're injured. Psychologically, that's very difficult to handle. The team has to move forward. Someone's got to come in off the field into your position, and the team's got to continue to go win that game. So it seems kind of like you're not moving forward anymore, but the team is moving forward, right? Or you have now FOMO, your fear of missing out of the success of the team because you put so much effort and love into that off season to go out and have a championship season. Or it may be your senior year and you're trying to increase your stock to go into the draft, and now you're dealing with an injury, your stock is going lower within your projections. I mean, that is extremely difficult to deal with on a mental
I,
standpoint. So what are some triggers, Ignacio, to know, like when we talk about self-awareness, what are some things that I can do to become more self-aware if I'm dealing with something like that?
You know, I think we can point out a couple of public use cases that we all know and have known, Simone Biles, as an example, and Phelps and others that even at the highest point of their game have had to take a step back at some point or take a look at reflecting on mental health as, the
Mm,
main reason that they need to take a step. So I think not letting it get to that point and reaching for help and making it part of the process along the way. It's like we don't need to wait for the balloon to explode to know that there's an explosion like coming, right? We can tell signs and symptoms of the stress. And that's one of the reasons we have Clinicom. It's not only just to assess somebody one time, but also we track and measure your progress over time.
mm,
We can find those peaks and valleys and avoid those kind of explosive moments. So
mm.
being aware, one thing to measure and track over time, but also being self-aware and self-reflective. So aside from our technology and how that can definitely help track and trend those things and avoid those critical moments, I think it's also important to look at individually self-reflecting and try to prioritize that the mental health, because all the winning of the games and all the financial success and all the things that it could lead to in your collegiate or professional experience are amazing. But if they're just for 2 or 3 years and then you have a couple of years of traumatic, whatever, that money's not going to last forever. So trying to extend that career life by keeping your mental health balance should be center mount for many, many athletes. And I think, athletes are strong and resilient mentally most of the time anyway. I mean,
Hmm.
resilience, dedication, drive, conviction, self-determination, being able to be on point and perform at a high level. I mean, these are some of the best mental and physical athletes there are. But with that extra turning up the gas and turning off the point, you also need some downtime. And I think that's
Hmm.
something that a lot of athletes, when they get to a certain level, don't take seriously, and they see it as a waste of time. But in reality, those reset moments are where a lot of people get mental clarity, they get physical rejuvenation, and not to overdo it, you know.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right, Ignacio, until you go splat. And then it's like, whoa, um, now I'm trying to make up ground. But I think if we can bring a little bit of that awareness, and players and parents and trainers can just try to get it early, and
Mhm.
then put some of those preventative measures in place, that would be phenomenal. And then I love
Take
the
it in,
fact that,
take it in.
yep,
Yeah.
I love the fact that you talked a little bit about having that longitudinal view of that person's health journey, right? So if your athlete is in high school and you're able to get that baseline assessment somehow on, what are their emotions, what are they feeling, what are some of the challenges that they're dealing with, and then do that on a sequence or a yearly basis, you can
Or
monitor just
monthly or quarterly.
monthly, whatever you recommend, Ignacio. I'm just thinking it allows me to just monitor myself. I do this with labs, right? Just having, yearly labs, you go in there and make sure nothing is out of range. So that way you're able to do your part within your health journey. And when we're in a combat sport like football, physically, mentally, you're going through a lot of trauma where something chemically or a chemical imbalance within your body could be going on, but if you're not monitoring it, you can't be aware of it, and then you can't take action on it. So just like with doing labs, annual labs every year, you can do your assessment on a regular basis where you can monitor that mental performance. Is that correct to say, Ignacio?
Yeah, that is. And this use case for sports, and then also for, let's say, veterans of the military, we recommend a certain model for this. And the model we recommend is the safe place model, we call it. You have to have a safe place to be yourself and tell the truth. And sometimes that's not coach, right?
Mm.
You have to have that relationship with coach. Coach is going to have to know, love you. Like I always think of Saban as one of the best coaches. We try to model and look at his speeches all the time. He's freaking awesome, right? And he always has those relationships with his players, but his players should also have a safe place. And Saban did this on Alabama. Is the mental health, they had a psychologist there available to them, but those things you talked about with psych wasn't things you might have talked with coach about. And so have that safe place model where you can tell your Clinicom reporter and the person reviewing the Clinicom's things that are just there and they're not going anywhere else. They're not going to be brought center. Your teammates aren't going to know about it. It's a safe place, encrypted at twice the level of your banks, to be yourself and track yourself. And if there's a
Mm.
major issue like, maybe a suicidality or something else, maybe it gets brought up to somebody else to get you more help. But in the sense that you're dealing with that with just your clinical staff or the people there to support and helping you, so that's a safe place for you, that you don't have to mix the pots together, worried about what your teammates are thinking, because they also know you're battling a certain situation. And nobody
Mm.
wants to deal with that. So I think it's important
So
to separate.
absolutely. And Iggy, can you elaborate a little bit on, you mentioned safe, right? So privacy, HIPAA. Um, if I'm a player and, I am dealing with some symptoms and I'm becoming aware and someone mentions, the Clinicom platform, can you talk a little bit about the privacy, HIPAA, if, there
Sure.
is a diagnosis, does everybody know about it, or is that private
Clinicom is
information
not.
for me? Can you talk a little bit more about the safe and secure platform?
So Clinicom is intended to be used by a clinical mental health professional to screen masses of people or a couple people. It is HIPAA compliant, GDPR compliant, FDA Part 11 compliant, which means the data is gathered, encrypted, and safe, like a weird IBM Watson. So we're underground with IBM. our encryption levels are your report is never sitting there with your name on it in a server.
Mm,
It's literally tables and listings that are brought together through encryption keys at 512K encryption, which is twice the level of your bank typically, to present that information on the screen. And when you hit close, it goes back into tables and listings. So if we're ever hacked, nobody can find out that this report goes to this to Calvin. It's just data tables of everybody's height and weight in one place. So that
got it.
separation of data makes your data safe. And we share that with a little intro video before people take it, so they know, hey, look, this is a place I'm going to sit on my couch from home, tell the truth. I don't have anybody judging me. It's encrypted. These people are never going to sell this data with my name on it to anybody, right? Personal information will never be sold to anybody else. It's like a life log for your mental health. And
Mm,
then, what's shocking is all our data over 20 years has shown that people are more revealing under those tenses than, hey, I'm meeting Dr. John Bob or Bobby John, whatever his name is, for the first time on Tuesday, and I have to tell him all my deep dark secrets. Hope he
mm,
doesn't go home and tell his wife later, right? So it's people are very revealing. We have a lot of veterans that take our assessment to the VA, and then they say, I don't have to keep going back to the VA, and they change the doctor every month, and I have to reopen up Pandora's box and re-explain myself or tell the story all over again. It's literally in your kind of life log package of your mental health that you can take with you. But also, more importantly, if you're getting a medication or getting a therapy, to track if that's working or not, and not just take your daughter's word for it, right? Oh, the daughter prescribes you this thing, and how are you doing today, Johnny? Well, I'm feeling a little bit better. What does a little bit better mean? How much
mm.
better? Am I measuring how much better? Are we using standardized tools that we would do in an FDA study to do how much better you're doing? And then also keep that objective and moving it from subjectivity of I feel a little bit better to exactly how much better you're getting on this day and why, and because of what treatment or why not.
Mm.
So you
I
have
think
a
they,
way to kind of flex and move and pivot.
I think they say, Ignacio, what gets measured gets managed.
Yeah, exactly. It's
So
not
if we're
measured.
able to measure, our mental performance, we can manage it. And I think that's so beautiful and impactful, not only within the sports world, the business world, it's life in general. So being able, someone asked me, what is if you could have one superpower, what would it be? And I'm like, to be able to control my mind and emotions 100% of the time. That would be my superpower in life.
Hard.
It's just it's so difficult to do, but so powerful if you are able to get even close to that mind
We
control.
should also address like the conflation sometimes that people have between mental health issues and social and determinative health issues. So if I'm a coach, call it high school, college, or professional team, all my players have different dynamics, right? And aside from the mental health issues of, people might think of, learning disorder or depression, anxiety, sleep, whatever those 80 conditions we screen for from, a lot of different variables. There's also a segment called the social determinants of health issues. So as a coach, and I teach I coach little league for my kids here
I
nowadays.
love it.
One of the things that I know is that understanding the context of the social determinants coming into your team.
Mm.
Does this kid have, he's going home, he's tired, he's hungry right now, but he's going to go home and is there going to be a plate on the table at
Can
dinner?
you break down what do you
Yeah.
when you say social determinants of health, Ignacio? Can you
Yeah.
break that down for the
So
audience?
let's say, if there's a safe place, what are the support systems at home? What are
Mm,
the education levels at home? What are the stability levels at home? Are they dealing with homelessness? Are they dealing with a roof over the head? Do they have food at home? Do they have legal issues at home? Are there criminal
mm,
issues at home? Are they dealing with drug or other issues because somebody else in the family has issues right now? So the contextual aspect of your mental health in society, what we call the biopsychosocial model, which is looking at
mm,
the entire person, not just, hey, do you meet the criteria for depression? That doesn't tell me a whole lot. Let me give you an example. So if I have a person that comes into clinic and they're depressed, and it's a clinical diagnosed depression, and the best, all the research is saying, hey, the best thing is to do some medication and therapy, not one or the other, because you don't want to just give therapy or just give meds, but the combination works really well. But the caveat to that is if you have a social determinant issue causing you depression, for example, let's say you have a lawsuit going on, you're getting sued for $10 million, right?
mm,
All the SSRIs in the world all the drugs in the world are not going to make that depression get better until that legal thing gets taken care of, right?
Mm,
Why are we going to go dosing you with a bunch of medication unless you need it, unless you're
mm,
having issues where you need that also, right? To understand the context of where that depression is coming from can help us solve those issues. So in those contexts, you might say, hey, you need some more support. You need your family support. You need to get your lawyer tuned up and get through this together. And how do we support you through that? Not let's throw more pills at something, right? It seems to
wow.
be in our society, the solution is always let's throw more pills at it. And that's not the answer. The answer is to understand where it's coming from, the context
Mm,
of it. You might have an athlete that's an amazing player on the field, and he's maybe your best player, but every fifth or sixth game they're off for some reason. They're just not on point, and you're like, why? You can achieve this level most of the time, but every fifth game you're just screwing it up. What's going on? Maybe they're having huge issues at home. Maybe they're having context issues and that psychosocial determinant issues. And to understand that context is everything.
Ignacio, that's such an important factor. I think I've been in many locker rooms, and I can tell you that the diversity in that locker room from where everybody comes from and the environment they come from is so different. And
Yeah,
you
it plays a part.
realize that some of these players are coming from some extreme circumstances. And like you mentioned, you never know what's going on when everybody leaves the locker room and goes home. And if you're going back to a stressful environment, chaos, the nuclear family isn't in place, uh, that can breed a lot of challenges, not just on the field, off the field, and just in life. And I think it was Aristotle that said, show me a boy's first 7 years, and I'll show you the man he becomes. And I think that just speaks so much volumes to that nuclear family, the household, and a lot of those outcomes that we see later on may have came from that early childhood development. Is that accurate to say, Ignacio?
I mean, it's really is accurate to say. I mean, the first years of life are obviously very, very important. The neuroscience, neurodevelopment all prove to that. Obviously, we all wish we were raised in a nuclear family where our parents together. 50% divorce rate in America today. Hard to say. Sadly, there's a lot of homes without fathers in them in different social economic groups, and those things are all play a part. But there's ways to fill that gap, and I think knowing that the gap is there is the first step in filling it. Right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and addressing that issue, and bringing in support groups and other things. So we don't know what we don't know. We don't ask.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important to, from a coach perspective or a team unity's perspective, we all know, and then maybe played on a team or two where we have some all stars, but they don't play well together, right? And we're like, man, if we could just get them to play well together, we'd be the best team ever, right? We got all the pieces, but they don't conjoin together. But a lot of that conjoining sometimes is understanding those nuances. And
Mm.
so getting to understand it and where they can fit in and fill in, I think are really, really important. We do, I think traumatic brain injuries is another issue. So Clinicom does assess for TBI. It's not a diagnostic tool, but it will gather the parameters for traumatic brain injuries, suicidality, aggression, violence, and other things. So it's not just mental health. We do alerts and screenings for some of those other things. So
Mm-hmm.
keeping a tap on head injuries, keeping a tab on how many concussions, when, the duration, how long have you worked out for, how your sleep was affected shortly after that. There's other things that are also play into this that are important. But thank you for
Wow.
pointing out the social side. It's
Of
important.
course. No, thank you. And so Ignacio, if I'm a high school parent and my athlete is a football player, lacrosse, wrestling, soccer, some type of sport where there's contact, and I start noticing some symptoms with my athlete, behavior is a little different. Like, how do I access something like Clinicom? If I go onto your website and I'm like, this looks like a very sophisticated platform, I'm interested in a third party, objective, evidence based approach. How do I get access to Clinicom?
Yeah. Well, right now, Clinicom is available through clinicians and different licensed users. So it could be that your school signs up for a license to have all the kids schooled. We have even communities signing up entire school districts for schools to be screened.
Mm,
In the private setting, obviously it'd be a universal license for the pro team to be able to screen unlimited numbers of people whenever they want. It's very inexpensive. It's about $12 per player, unlimited screenings all year long. If you want to screen them 1,000 times in a year, it's $12. So it's $1 a month. It's not expensive at all. But right now you have to go through a clinician. So if you're that mom or dad and your school doesn't have Clinicom, but you'd like to get a screening, tell your mental health, make an appointment with your mental health professional, ask them to send you one. They can sign up very inexpensively and send you an assessment, but they can also bill insurance for it. So they can make some money on it. It's billable to insurance for $50 to $150, depending on the type of clinician involved. So it's a revenue source for most of the clinicians that use it. But more importantly, that it's really understanding somebody. So think about this, Calvin. We would never give somebody with insulin without checking their blood sugar first, right? I would never give you a drug without drawing the blood first, understanding you have a problem, and then giving you the solution. But we do that all day, every day with neurotropic medications on our families and kids. 80% of these drugs are prescribed by family medicine doctors that have never had very little mental health training at all and don't even understand the criteria for depression, for example. So and this is a tool to empower the exact criteria by the American Psychiatric Association standard and the DSM to empower those family doctors, those other people to understand the scope and to care navigate to the right level and cost of care and to track that outcome over time. So I think it's important. Ask your family physician, ask your doctor to get you a Clinicom. And in a couple of years, we have a direct-to-consumer version coming out. So in about 18 to 24 months, we will have a direct-to-consumer version that somebody will be able to go out and get on their own. And then we're also partnered with the United Nations Global Mental Health Task Force. So some global partners involved there, the World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, and we're conducting the world's largest mental health study ever done on Americans, 1 million assessments. And we're giving away 1 million assessments for free with the partnership with the American Psychiatric Association. So that program rolls out this fall. And if you want to keep tabs on it, you can go to millionmindsfund.org or GMHT, the Global Mental Health Task Force, gmht.org, if you want to get some of those assessments down the road.
Perfect. I'll add all that in the description of the video. So folks, if you're interested, feel free to take a look. And Ignacio, so now we've reached out to our primary care physician, or if our school offers this, we've spoken to our athletic trainer, our sports medicine doctor. We've logged on to the Clinicom platform. We've taken the assessment. What does this unlock for me as a patient? We hear a lot about patient centricity in the clinical research world. What does this unlock for me after taking this assessment, and what actionable steps can I take if I'm the parent of an athlete? I am an athlete. I'm the wife of an athlete who has noticed some behavior changes in their husband after retirement. What can you do with that assessment now to identify that root cause and then take actionable steps to improve your condition?
As a user, one, it gives you that privacy and that precision medicine. So think about, there's a difference between going to Sears and buying a suit off the rack or getting an Armani suit tailored to you, right? There's a precision tool tailored to you and adapts to you. So everybody's report's different. There's not a set of questions that everybody gets. There's the variables here is called a Sicilian. It's one with 36 zeros. It's more humans than ever lived on the face of the earth. This is tailored down to you as an individual human. So this is your precision mental health, your parameters, everything about you, but more importantly, capture in a way where you didn't have to disclose sensitive information like rape, traumas, abuse, to verbally saying it to a stranger. You're doing it from your couch, on your couch at home with a glass of wine or a glass of water, whatever that looks like, and on your phone, and then encrypted and saving that so you can also track your progress. But more importantly, you can track, is my clinician on the right track? Do I believe what they're telling me? This person is telling me my kid's ADHD. Are they really? Do they meet criteria? Like a neutral arbiter of truth of, am I on the right track of service? Do these people have me on the right medications? Do I need to be on this medication? How am I doing on this medication? And kind of giving somebody some guardrails to put accountability in the system.
Absolutely. And Ignacio, I think I would love to kind of walk through one practical example. And a lot of the times we hear about the transition from the athletic arena to becoming a normal civilian, right? Retirement. It's uh, it's very difficult a lot of the times for those who have reached certain levels of the sport to lose that identity that they've developed for so many years. It's extremely devastating for a lot of families, and I'm curious, with that being such a prevalent issue within the football community, how do you get someone that's going through an identity crisis at the time to want to take, this type of assessment? Or if I'm the wife of that individual, how are some actionable steps to actually get a person that may not be aware of what they're going through to want to seek this opportunity so that way they can put in some therapies or some practice into place to help get them through that tough time?
I mean, it takes awareness to take action, right? And so, the sad part of mental health and mental health conditions is the effects on families. It doesn't just affect the person going through bipolar disorder, depression, suicidality, TBI. It affects those around them, right? The way they interact with those around them, the way those interactions get processed, the happiness or sadness around that. So mental health affects the entire family. If somebody in your family is affected by mental health issues, be it TBI, memory issues, sleep issues, be able to focus, irritability, aggression, those are typical TBI symptoms. Everybody's affected, right? So one, communicating how that makes the others in the family. If I'm a wife of a player and I want to let them know, without pointing fingers, the best way to communicate that typically is, giving examples of somebody else, right? Well, how do you think you would feel if Bobby Player was going home and he's yelling at his wife every day, or he's forgetting stuff, or he doesn't remember, or he's really, really irritable and not sleeping? How do you think that makes Sally feel? And
Mm,
giving outside perspective without pointing the finger. First of all, nobody likes getting the finger pointed at them. But when you put frames of reference around outside perspectives and giving examples of, most people can understand those things and start to reflect. And then, instead of pointing the finger like you did this on Tuesday, you did that on Tuesday, how would you feel if usually works really good? Or how do you feel if you saw this happening? What do you think that person feels? Making them think and digest those things helps most people kind of self-regular self become self-aware, and then it's just getting the right help. If it's a clinical issue, maybe going to your yogi might not be the best thing, right? So really understanding the difference between wellness and clinical care, and at which point wellness isn't well enough, you need to go get some real help. I think those are the two kind of big leapfrogs that a lot of people need to make in that decision making.
absolutely. And I think, again, it doesn't sound like it's just the individual that is going through this challenge. It affects the entire family. So that can be super, that just compounds the issue even more. And one thing that we see when you had mentioned the stat of 50% of marriages end in divorce, Ignacio, financial issues within the marriage or the family. And of course, 1.7 trillion in student loan debt right now. The average borrower has a balance of $30,000 and their monthly payment on that is around $500. Um, that brings a lot of stress as well too. When we look at financial stress, home buying right now is difficult for those first-time home buyers to get into the market. If you're going through some type of financial crisis or challenge, that impacts the family. It just compounds everything when there's financial issues in the household. So do you see a lot of mental health challenges coming as well from financial issues?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we do track is if you are having financial issues, and it's important. I mean, some of those things are, things you can be mitigated, or some things sometimes are not mitigatable. They're not things you did on purpose or it's your fault. Sometimes they're based on decisions we made, but either way, they're affecting us. And
Mm,
so, sadly, I think the pressures on society, and this is not a Clinicom or sports person, but this is being a person alive in 2025 issue. Bread was 10 cents 50 years ago. The typical family probably only had a handful of bills to pay every month. And now that list of things to pay every month has gotten 4 times as long, right? We're paying for
mhm.
apps and memberships and this, that, and the other, and things to keep up with, and student loan debt. So yeah, there is tremendous financial pressures, and we see that in a lot of the families we serve. We see that in the athletes compounding those things. It's one more thing to worry about. So addressing that and being aware of that is super critical. But I also think, and as a society, and this is not a Clinicom thing or a mental health thing, but as a society, we need to start looking at what is really important. What is truly important is our mind, body, and soul, and keeping those things happy. And that the
Mm-hmm.
materialism, more and more does not necessarily get us happier. I think a lot of athletes, I know a couple professional football players that I've hung out with. Most of my roommates in college at Auburn were athletes. One of my best friends won the gold medal in the Olympics. I think the thing to realize is that there's a constant striving for that target, that North Star of getting there and achieving that moment. And we forget about the journey and happiness along the journey and then here and now, and being able to be happy where we're at in the moment we're at, because that
Mm,
real happiness occurs. And any affluent person that's made millions of dollars will tell you that the Ferraris and the Lambos is not what ended up making them happy,
mm-hmm.
and more is less in those situations, right? A lot of the really financially successful people that I know have chosen to drive a less expensive flat. Maybe they have a Mercedes, but maybe it's 10 years old and it's paid off, and they're just happier having that money in the bank and being happier. So I think our materialism, changing the mindset of materialism, changing the goals and targets, that it's not about the dress or the suit or the fat fancy car. Maybe it's the peace of mind that we were really seeking.
That time and freedom, huh? And it's funny, I like Dave Ramsey and his financial principles, and he talks a little bit about, money makes you more of what you already are. So if you're already, stressed, angry, and miserable, it's just going to optimize that. But if you're already giving, you're generous, you're enjoying life, you're mindful, you're present, all those things that you mentioned, Ignacio, money is just gonna just give you more options and be able to help those and be more generous. So I think all those factors play into that mental health piece that we're talking about, but it's so hard. It's easy for us to just come on here, Ignacio, and say, have a positive outlook on life. You're dealing with a combat sport. When you get off the field, just go take a nap. You'll be all right, and make it up with your spouse at home. Don't worry about the identity crisis, but it's hard. But I think the first step that we've come. Say it again, Ignacio.
Easier now, Calvin, that the college system has opened up the finance side, because
Mm.
that extends career length, right? Extends the revenue cycle a little bit for these athletes, the ability to generate capital in a longer career cycle. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, if that has been more helpful to relieving some of those pressures.
I think again, Ignacio, it's optionality, and we have a free market economy here in America. We live in an incredible country, so the opportunity to be able to receive some type of revenue if you're in college as an athlete, it has given a lot of options to individuals that weren't promised beforehand. So if they're able to leverage that opportunity and be disciplined within their finances. I always promote Dave Ramsey with his baby steps and financial peace. It's super important, and I think that does help with the transition, right? When you're done playing, now you have some type of financial foundation where you can go and purchase that home. That's the number one dictator within building wealth is home ownership. So having some money that you're able to get your life settled out of college, go and find your next step, whether that be in corporate America, entrepreneurship, have some startup money, so that way you don't have to go into debt. It just gives you options. And I think when you have options, I tend to feel a little bit less stressed sometimes, Ignacio. And when I had just have one option and I don't know how I feel about that option, it kind of brings a little bit more pressure. But if I have five good options and then I'm able to analyze and pick the best one, my stress is lower. So again, you mentioned with the new opportunity for college athletes to make some money, I think it gives them options now and not depend on making it to the league in order to build that financial foundation needed to
You know,
transition into the real world.
the studies around the blue zones, if you're familiar with them, Atsuka, it's like some of the places where
Yes.
people live to be 100 years old.
Yes.
A lot of those studies are showing it's not only diet, exercise, and all those environmental factors, But part of it is also your community, your group, like the people
Mm,
around you, right? Like isolated older people live less than people that have a bunch of their grandkids around them in the community. And Sally's going to her church on Wednesdays and having community around us. So
mhm,
community is just as important to our mental health as well. Put aside money and the success of the career and all that, but having that support system, having those people around them. I think a lot of athletes get so pigeonholed into the vision of I'm exercising, I'm working, I'm training, I'm coach, and there's not time for community building. There's not
mm,
time for family. There's not time for these things that they think are, I'll do that later, or I'll do that, when I reach this level. But I think, you can't turn 35 or 40 and realize now I want to start building into my community. And where do I pick up? So I think keeping that as a slice and a column in the pie to always try to build upon. And I'm sure you know a
mm.
lot of collegiate players that took that community side all the way through, and probably they're just the more happier ones, right? And it's probably one of the reasons, I think. So I think that's also something to be said if we're going to discuss mental health.
About that, right? When you have counsel, you're able to make better decisions. You have individuals who have that experience, that knowledge, and can give you that sound advice to figure out whatever you're going through. And sometimes that's so powerful to just have that sounding board. Um, whether that be it can be a Bible study, a book club, anything that gets you out of that normal routine and allows counsel to come in. And I think that's incredible
Or
as well.
just serving at a soup kitchen, like, or helping serve meals. Like, if you're thinking you're having a bad day and you go serve at a homeless shelter, believe me, you're smiling no matter if you got $2 in your pocket. You're a lot, you realize, man, what to be grateful for, right? And
Absolutely.
gratitude, I always try to tell people that I've coached in my life is gratitude and attitude. Like if you got the right gratitude and the right attitude, you can do anything, you know?
There you go. Well, Ignacio, thank you so much for joining. Once again, where can people find you if they want to learn a little bit more about
Yeah.
Clinicom? And
Yeah, we'd love if you need to reach out to us, you can find us at clinicom.com. If you're interested in the UN program and those free million assessments, it's a millionmindfund.org, or gmht.org is the Global Mental Health Task Force. Feel free to reach out. Find me on LinkedIn. It's Ignacio Handal. And Clinicom is in 27 countries right now, but where it's available in several languages. So happy to help whoever needs. If you want to screen an entire school or just one person, feel free to reach out.
awesome. Again, Ignacio, thank you so much for joining, bringing some awareness to the football community, and we'll talk soon. So, Full Ride You, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share. I'm Coach Klein, Ignacio Handal. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Bye.
Bye bye.